Check 1 2 3 4. Check. Welcome to the January 3rd discussion meeting. Prior to this meeting, we did have an executive session to discuss personnel, safety and security, and legal matters. So, Dr. Bissell, discuss.
Okay, just number one on the agenda, I would like to have Dr. Nedley and the principals to talk a little bit about our NWEA data and some of the changes that have been made in the schools this year to help with student growth.
Okay, so in front of you, each board member, you will have a folder, and in that folder will contain a chart at the very end of your documents I gave you that will contain NWA growth data, achievement data, and PSSA data from this past school year. I also included the family guide to the MAP growth report for those who are brand new to us on the board, so that you can understand what that data looks like as well. I also included there the understanding of what the achievement distributions for us look like, and also understanding what the growth data looks like for us when we review it. So to review it very quickly, the district sets a goal for their Title I performance goals each school year. And in those goals, we set a district goal at 70% for all of our students to reach their individual growth scores in NWEA for math and ELA. And that's very important to emphasize that we're looking at each individual child and not a whole group of children in a grade level, such as what the PSSA scores does and reports out. So that's what you have in the first data table in blue. That shows us the percent of students who actually met their individual MAP growth for the school year between the fall and spring terms last school year. Okay? And you can see there were many.
Excuse me, Dr. Ned?
Yes.
What's the HMNN mean?
Hutch, Metzger,
Hutchinson,
and
Metzger, I'm sorry, Jeff, so thank you, Brian. That means that, and also be aware on the front cover, I also listed that for kindergarten last year, we only assessed them the winter and the spring term, and this school year, where we started to test them 3 times a year instead of 2, to obtain more data as well for them. So as you can see, some of the schools did meet those individual growth score that we set at 70%. Some were almost there, and the schools that did not meet that in their grade levels, the building principals will speak about the changes that they are making this school year to achieve for the children to achieve their individual growth. In the next column in orange, in that data table set, you will see the NWEA achievement data. And remember, achievement data for NWEA is normative data that they set scores for children to reach each term. That is normative data that has been collected over a long period of time that they put into their system for us to reach. And you can see our goal was to be in the 50th percentile in each grade level, and you can see that most of our children did reach that in the grade levels. And then when you look at the PSSA scores, Dr. Bissell can answer any questions if you have on the growth data there, the PVOS in green and the achievement data in yellow.
So one thing that we really want to do moving forward, the NWEA data, we get the data immediately. So after a student takes that test, we're getting immediate data on where they are as far as their achievement on a standard level, but then also for a lot of kids a baseline. So not every kid's the same, especially the elementary level coming into kindergarten. We don't have any data that comes from state level if we just rely on PSSAs. The other thing with PSSAs is we typically get the data a long time after the child takes the test. In fact, this year when we got our final parent reports, we already had NWEA data from the fall where we had that new data from the kid, and then the PSSA data come in, which was from back in April. So when we take that test, then we can test them again mid-year and then at the end of the year to get a good idea of their growth. We can also check on achievement. But we do know that, again, kids coming into kindergarten, some of them have been read to for 5 years by their parents. Others, they have no idea They're just learning letters. And so there's big gaps there. We can find out where that individual child is, and what we really want to see is when we get that report of this child should be here at the end of the year, we want to see that child meets that mark. Now, in some of these areas, you see low numbers. That means we didn't hit the mark of the child meeting their growth, what they were anticipated to grow at in that year. That's where we have to step in and look at this data and say, okay, what are we doing in the buildings? What are we doing in our classrooms, in our interventions, so that we can set those goals? And we all talked this year of saying, we're going to set the goal that 70% of the children are going to meet that growth goal. And you might say, well, 70%, what about the other 30? Well, the ultimate goal is 100%. But what we're looking at is, how do we look at the data that we have and say, okay, where do we want to be? Where's our target that we really want to be to say, we did that and we can bump that bar and bump that bar. So that's why we really want to look at this data. We've also been talking about this on the state level. A lot of schools are using tests like NWEA. We're paying for that through federal funds. The state level is paying for our Keystones and PSSAs through state funds. The time that we take for the tests also. So that's something that we've been talking about locally and then also at the state level of, can we do different? We find this data much more useful for immediate impact, for immediate interventions, and for checking, whereas for instructional purposes, the PSSA doesn't give us that instructional data.
And can I also say that our building principals may say this to you, that if they notice that a child is coming in one day and ready to take this test for us, and that child is not ready to take it, they're not having a good day, they're having a bad day, they don't need to take it that day for us. The school can reschedule when they take that test, or they can take it over for us too if they the test had to be interrupted for some reason for them. So it's not a high pressure test as well that's gonna give us good data on what the students can actually do for us at that point in time. So if we want to start with the school principals discussing on the changes that they made this year, if we want to start with Chris.
One of the things that we have done nicely is teachers are conferencing with their students. They're setting individual goals with the individual students, and it has made a difference. The kids are owning their learning, which is pretty neat at such a young age. They discuss where they are and where they'd like to be, and it's almost do like a little action plan with the classroom teacher to set some goals. And we've seen good results with that as far as just the kids really, like I said, just taking that step of that ownership of the learning. In our data meetings, we don't only talk about the NWEA test, but day-to-day interactions with students and assessments that occur within the classroom as well, and just kind of look at the whole child. Other things we do is the resources we have a lot of different interventions, and we try to tailor those interventions to the specific needs of the students. And we don't just throw a canned intervention at them. We pick and choose within that intervention the key points that the individual students need. So those types of things are occurring.
And if I can add, when Chris said that they're doing individual meetings with kids to set growth goals, and you might think, well, yeah, shouldn't they all be doing that? One of the benefits with this is when we start to see this data, and you look at an area like first grade ELA student growth at Metzger, 82% met their growth goal. So immediately you go to those teachers and say, what practice were you using? What were you doing? We can start to pick some of those pieces up of, oh yeah, I can do that too. I can implement that too. And we can start to say, okay, everybody's going to implement that to get better over time.
It does become powerful then, because then they can share it across buildings and improves their best practices. Thanks.
Tina?
Okay, in addition to what Chris is saying, because I think all three buildings are doing a lot of the things that he's talking about as well. This data is just a piece of the data that we look at when we have data team meetings, because we made the decision several years ago to follow the MTSS process and structure. So that allows us then to bring in all sorts of things that we can look at from more formal pieces of data like NWEA and PSSA to informal kinds of pieces, classroom tests or a child's performance if they're writing or reading in the classroom, Teachers are also doing classroom level assessments as well. So all of this is giving us a good picture of the child. The data you have in front of you is giving you general overall idea of where we are in terms of achievement and growth in each grade level in the school. But we are also able to drill down further into the data, into individual students. So when we sit at a data team meeting, we are not just talking in general about what the overall grade level score would be. We're looking more at where the students are, who is closer to achieving where they need to be, who is further away, and we also then will go another step further, and we've talked about this in the past. We've talked about diagnostic assessments. So if we see children really struggling, then the reading specialists come in and they take a closer look and they drill down further into this. So if a child is struggling with phonics in language arts, are we talking about their sounding and blending, is it struggling sounding and blending, or are they still having trouble just learning the letters and the sounds that the letters make, or what exactly is the problem? Because we want to be able to then assign an intervention to the specific problem that a child is having. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor, you want them to treat you for what your symptoms are and what you're really ailing in, and so we need to figure that out. We run tests to find out what that is. At Metzger, we also added on to a PD, a professional development component this year in terms of working with teachers in their regular blocks. So students have intervention time to be working on the things that they're struggling with, but we also talked about differentiation and diving deeper into that concept of differentiating during the regular language arts or math time, set apart from the intervention time, so that we are really trying to figure out exactly where the child is and support them when we're teaching a new concept, as well as when we have to support them after the teaching and they're still struggling. So we have been spending, with my staff, we've been spending a lot of time each month in our faculty meetings talking about what differentiation really looks like and building a toolbox of some deeper strategies in terms of differentiation that we can help to more individualize the support we're giving kids.
Okay, Jen?
So at Hutchinson, we are double the kids and double the staff. So working with Mr. Barbado, who's also with me, for those of you that are new to the board, the assistant principal, and working with Tina and Chris, we implemented a sort of a personalized time, not just for interventions academic, but social emotional. So K1 and 2 has a particular time period where all learning stops as far as like the core, and it's personalized, and they either go somewhere or they stay in the classroom and get from either the classroom teacher or support staff something that connects with either their academics or their behavior. This year we revamped our entire PBIS program to make it more personalized for students. We looked at, suspension data, bus referrals, and we hit the heavy areas, the buses and the cafeteria. We spent the first 5 weeks on character days and actually teaching the expected behaviors, building wide, which has cut our suspension in school and out of school by half this year, which we're super happy about. So during that intervention time is not just academic, but social emotional, where they go to maybe a counselor for a social group and they work on something that they're struggling with. We have a lot of students that suffer from trauma or have homelessness, so we have students that need check-ins from adults and someone safe that they can talk to. So that time is set aside for 30 minutes where they're not missing anything academic. It's a time where everything stops and they go to where they need to go. The second thing that we implemented this year was we moved Foundations, which is a phonemic phonics program, into the Tier 2, which is that ABC time. We call it academic behavioral coaching time. So we don't really call it intervention, we call it coaching, because it may not be a program, it may be something completely designed around what you need, either academic or behavior. The counselors are all involved. Both of them teach during that ABC time during the morning. In the afternoon, everything stops for 3, 4, and 5. We're able to steal and borrow some time. I know some of you got some complaints. We started school 5 minutes early, so thank you for getting that ear beating, but that allowed us to build in 30 minutes for K-2 and 30 minutes for 3, 4, 5. We had Marissa Riga from the IU come and review our PBIS program, and we are ready to move on to go to Hershey if we want to. So we're kind of excited about that little stamp of approval. The other thing, our student assistance program, which all 3 buildings have, we implemented an extra layer to that. Any student who has been pushed on to SAP also has the potential to eat breakfast with an adult in the morning. So it's, again, that check and connect, where the teachers, we cover them, and the child gets to choose somebody from the SAP team that they would like to eat breakfast with, just to start their morning with a trusted adult, so that check and connect. So we've really looked at that MTSS triangle with both not only the academics, but that social emotional learning. We've also, our other goal is to reduce visits to the counselor's office, to start teaching students how to regulate their bodies. I know Mr. Little went to to Outdoor Odyssey. Immediately he came back with some Tai Chi, so we've implemented that. We also implemented a leadership program for some students in the 4th and 5th grade that sort of need to channel their energy into being more leaders instead of actors. So Mr. Little has taken that on as well as an extra sort of just something that he was a takeaway from Outdoor Odyssey for students, to give them kind of that, a little bit of that leadership piece during their day. So they have become mentors for kindergarten and 1st grade. So.
Okay, then we have Mr. Jones here today for the high school to talk about what changes he made for their ATSI plan.
Good. So first of all, it's really nice because the things that you're hearing are very student-centered as individuals, and it takes, you know, a lot of caring staff to pull off something like this, which we have in abundance, K-12. So that's very, very important. You know, a lot of times you look at high school kids and they're older, they're a finished product, they can't grow. So that's obviously not true. So we're looking at, you know, how can we get them engaged? You know, how can we get them to school? Looking at their credits and grades. And we decided to focus really with the freshman class. It's something even when I was dean of students 8 million years ago that we talked about. So our plan really is we have a team of 12 staff, 12 teachers. They're divided up into 3 teams. I made a survey where teachers could go through, they could nominate students to be part of the group, the adult mentor group, and it could be anything. You know, social emotional issues, grade issues, engagement issues. So we have 18 students in the freshman class that were identified. We sat down as a group. It was kind of, for those of you that know what this is, a fantasy football draft, so to speak, who's connected with this student, who has an interest that is similar to this student, so we divide them up. So 3 teams, 6 students on each. We met as a group. We've met 3 times already. We've developed kind of an intake form, so it's going to be almost like a to get to know you form, where they're going to gather and build a relationship with those students, and then they're going to work with them to develop an individualized goal. And part of that isn't the NWEA data, and that's individualized also, but it could be an attendance goal, it could be a grade goal, it could be a behavior goal, and then they're going to meet with them every couple of weeks. They'll meet with their individual students in their team, check on their goal. Obviously, it's, you know, when you're setting a goal, you want it to be measurable and you want to see them getting better. So that allows us to put interventions in place. If we don't see improvement, it also allows us to pat them on the back when we do. So at the high school, staff and students, something that we started last year when I got there, we call it ERA, because I'm a sports guy. So ERA in baseball, the lower it is, the better it is for a pitcher. So engagement, relationships, and accountability. They have to rate themselves, staff and students, and it's a simple 1 through 5, with the goal being 1 is your highest. So there's an explanation of each of those levels of what they are. So the students self-assess, the staff self-assess, and then they have to honestly look at it and say, okay, my ERA in this area is a 5, my ERA in this area is a 2, and your goal is to work and set a goal to bring those numbers down. So far, it's really working. We're making connections with kids, and it'll just get better and better as we go.
If I can say, the high school, the Keystones have been extremely difficult to look at the data because our students have been exempt from COVID. So even in working with our class group, which they'll be here next month to talk about their character leadership scholarship service. When we got to the scholarship and, you know, Keystones would come up, they would kind of say, well, that doesn't matter to us, we're exempt. Like, yeah, you were, but, you know, kids coming up won't be. So we need to get back into that mindset of those. But the data has been very difficult to view, because when the kids were exempt, you're not getting that exempt, you're not getting anything from them. So that's been kind of difficult through that period, those Keystone scores. I'll throw it back to you, Lenny, if you have anything else.
The only thing I want to finish this saying is, after hearing all our building principals talk, all of this could not be done without our teaching staff. I mean, they are the hands-on in the classroom, and they tremendously care about our students each and every day. And they truly want our students to be successful. And they're trying to do everything possible with our leadership teams to make that happen in our schools.
The chart that we were referencing here, now that's showing last fall to last spring. So what we hope to do, we will have a second round of NWA testing this month. So we hope to be able to get together in February to analyze that data and see where we are based on the interventions that have been put in place at the buildings. And then again, we'll get another round in the springtime to then have a similar chart. And what, again, the goal that we had is that we would see in that blue area, that we would see 70s and above across the board there. That's kind of the goal that was set. And we'll be able to monitor that first in January to see where we are.
How does the blue correspond to the orange?
Blue and orange are very different,
They are.
because orange that's your achievement
That's the
based on that
content.
grade level. That's not necessarily the content, that's
Everything's
your
content.
content and the skill at that particular
Correct.
grade level. So
Okay.
based on where you should be at the grade level. But if, let's say, a kid's coming in at it's fourth grade and they're on a first grade reading level for whatever reason, the growth will tell us, where's your growth goal supposed to be? We may not get you from a first grade to a fourth grade at the end of that year, but we should get you from here to here, and then that's where that growth comes in. Like, did we get that kid to achieve? You can look at it the same way of a kid that's gifted. We don't want to see a kid that's achieving. We should see them achieving high, but we also want to see them growing, because if they're just achieving but they're not growing, we're not getting them better. So we're also looking at it on that end, that, you know, are we getting all kids to grow?
Okay, where do you want the district goal to be for achievement? Because it's set at 50%.
We said 50%, and that's where NWA suggested with us when we first started looking at the data, that a good goal is the 50th percentile, because remember, we're comparing with other students across the United States, not with just Pennsylvania children, and that would be a good goal. And then as we become familiar with the data and using this data even more intensively in the school, then that's when we start to move the bar and raise the bar for us.
Last year, the only goal was that 50th
Correct.
percentile. What you're seeing, that district goal, 70% on the growth, that's new for this year. That's a goal that's set this year.
And remember, Emily, that NWA sets their own growth that each child should reach each term that we test. So there's specific grid scores that they should achieve in the fall, then the grid scores change for the winter and then the spring, because the content increases to get difficult too.
Okay, is there a summative at the, so in May, is there sort of like an overall, so it's not just like whatever unit you're on, it's more of like
This is not based on any program. This gives you random questions for that grade level at that particular time of the year.
And
So
it's
if you're
also
taking-
individualized.
Yes, and if you're taking the test adjusts to your answers, so they can either go up in complexity or if they can lower in complexity. So it's all based on the individual child. It's just not a set given questions that you answer for a program.
At this time, they will all have that PSSA, which is a grade level summative assessment that will be there too.
This is based on the child's zone of proximal development.
Well, I guess I'm asking, because you're saying it's totally individualized, so how do you derive very much meaningful information by grade level if it's
because it gives us grade level specific standard data as well.
Okay.
Let's say there's 100
So
questions.
standard data, that's helpful.
Yes,
And
it's standards, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I've seen these tests before, but let's say there's 100 questions in this block. Going from easy to really hard.
It's like the SAT.
Yeah, they start somewhere in the middle, and, if the student does well, they move up, and then more difficult. And if they don't do as well, they might move down to try to get where that student ends up in that scale.
That's
Okay.
correct, Brian. If you look at the family report, this explains to you the test.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
look at that.
yep. And that was given to you back in the fall as well, this report.
Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't.
That's okay. Yep,
They're
that's why I did it again.
So they adapt to the individual.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
okay. Good questions, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Miller?
So the next topic says grad requirements and legislative changes, and it's really just to address a couple of things that have happened. One, legislative changes in graduation requirements to meet the categories of the Keystone graduation. So they're different than saying what the state had said, all kids have to take 4 English classes, all kids have to pass 4 social studies courses, all kids have to pass 3 science courses. And a lot of that set in the original school code, that goes way back to even the Committee of 10. There were 4 English classes because all immigrants, we wanted them to learning, take all 8 years, and then in high school take 4 years. Same thing with social studies was based on U.S. history and civics. Those are still there, of U.S. history and civics at the high school level. The reasoning then of the sciences were listed as biology, chemistry, and physics, and they were listed in that order because it was alphabetical, but those have been in for a very long time. So there have been changes to that, and those are things that we would like, especially at the high school level, to look at for the 25-26 school year with the Education Committee, and pulling together and saying, okay, how did the state change their language? How do we need to look at our graduation requirement policy? And how do we do what's best for kids? So even having our kids and some alumni to talk about what works with our grad requirements and what doesn't. We already have some feedback from our kids that, we're, a lot of what Mr. Jones was saying of student motivation, our structures are unmotivating kids to learn. And that's something that we really have to take a look at. And you'll probably hear that from our class group in February. One of the things that I do want to talk about, another thing that we think can really change and can benefit all of our students, and it came from the trip that we took to Kentucky. And one of our high school teachers was able to go. And I told other people already that thank you so much to the board for letting a teacher go on that trip. It was more than beneficial to be able to walk through that visit with a teacher, with his perspective, and us to be able to collaborate and talk about it. But the one thing that we noticed at that school, it was a collaborative amongst a number of county schools in northern Kentucky that were looking for a different way to provide an educational setting for kids that were unmotivated, disconnected to school, didn't find a purpose in a 10-period day in what they were doing. They wanted more hands-on learning, more project-based learning. When the teacher and I went into the building, we looked at it as, well, we have this 4x4 block schedule where we have a lot of project-based learning, but what we saw that what they were doing with their schedule, it really opened up our eyes to say we can do different with our schedule that can open up opportunities for kids and can open up the system for our kids to have what these kids going to that special school in northern Kentucky had. So our 4x4, most of you are aware of that you get 4 classes or a couple 9-week classes that go in one semester. But a lot of you are also aware, and some of you from your own experiences with your own kids, that they'll get called in August and say, we've got this class and this class that are happening at the same time and they're singletons. And probably the best example is band, and then something like mock trial, AP calculus is usually in both semesters, but when you get those that are back to back and a kid says, I'd really like to take mock trial, I'd really like to take band also, and they get to that point where they got to make that decision. What we saw there was a 6-period, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where the kids were taking, they all were taking math, science, social studies, they all took a world language, and they all took a career program class. So we have those. We have our freshman seminar, we've got our financial lit, we've got our senior project that happens in our schools. They went to the 4x4 on the Tuesday, Thursday. We visited the school on a Thursday. We didn't see any seniors in the building. That's because 300 of them were out on an internship that day at local businesses and local companies. If they weren't on an internship, we would see some of them that were working in a classroom with a teacher, and they were in a dual enrollment program, some of them. Others were in a project classroom where they were working on a team project on something that they were doing together. There was a lot of flexibility. There was a student there who was really into the medical field, and he was getting ready to apply to colleges to get into to pre-med, bio and pre-med. But he loves music. And so when we saw him, he was in the music studio finishing his first recorded album. And then the kids in the art room doing digital arts, they were creating his album cover. And these kids were all talking about the things that they, yeah, I'm really into engineering, but I love art and I want to take, and we know that makes them better engineers down the road. So myself and the teacher on the visit, we just said, we're right there. We're not on that 10-period schedule. We're on that 4x4, and we have all this feedback from parents and teachers and everyone that it's blocking out. And then what we saw there was this opened up opportunity. So we already started conversations. I threw to Mr. Jones, like, hey, can we do this next year? And he pumped the brakes, and that's good. And it was, let's get a team of teachers, of students, of our education committee members, and let's work through this, and let's set that goal in 25, 26. We can look at it with the graduation requirements, and we can look at it with those opportunities, even the senior project. With what we have going on now with local businesses looking to, how do we get kids, and we can give them real world experiences, and we can tie that to the senior project that's already in existence. We get a lot of kids that tell us, senior project's great, but I've got all this school, and then I've got the senior project. And what we saw in that school was, I got all this school, and the senior project's part of all of that. And I've got time where I can go out and I can focus on those things. And it was just, we saw kids that told us they were disconnected with school, they were unmotivated, and the one thing that the teacher and I, he kept saying, they're all engaged. They're all engaged. And like it just really, really stood out. So we'd like to set that as a goal for 25, 26, even working with the middle school, because the middle school already said, wait, we can do a lot with this too. We might be able to do a lot with staffing and provide more for our kids with changing just what our structures look like.
Sounds exciting.
I knew you would be excited about the band. And we were too. To see kids taking courses that they were like, I'm not going to build a career off of this, but I'm learning so much in it, and I love it. That's pretty neat to see that they have the opportunity to do that.
When did the graduation requirements, legislative changes happen?
That changed a couple of years back, because we actually have what is structured in here in the course guide, which are the Pennsylvania pathways to graduation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the course guide, it's on page.
So this is in reference to the pathways changing, like
Yeah.
the Keystone things?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
it's that Pennsylvania pathways
Okay.
to graduation.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there was like something else.
No.
Okay.
Now the other thing that did change was right in December, and that was the 180 days or 990
I was
hours.
gonna ask you about that, I thought I heard something.
Yeah, and that gives flexibility too, because you now have a little flexibility with students as to, okay, does a student want to go out on an internship, and do you have to be worried about that seat time? Like, it used to be, if your butt's in a seat for 180 days, you're learning. We know that's absolutely not true. It provides a little more flexibility of how we can provide education for different students and different groups of students. So that was just passed, I think, December 15th.
That was the end of December.
Yeah, at mid to end of December. But it also threw up something that the superintendent's talked about with with snow days. With the 180, 990 is, we were talking about FIDS days before, and I know we've had this discussion with the board in the past of, with a FIDS day, we're not giving kids that traditional snow day. And one of the superintendents just said, hey, like, we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about where that snow day fits. We would still have to have that makeup day with the staff, but might that look different now that we have extra time to work with the staff on professional development, professional learning, growth, curriculum writing, and different things, and still give kids that snow day. So that was just thrown out there right before the break, and we said, yeah, like, it's kind of nice to have kids say, like, have a snow day. So those are things that we can talk about with the education committee as we move forward. Okay, just getting into committee reports, there are things that we're going to make some decisions on next week, and that would be with the Facility and Finance Committee recommending up to 4 board members to serve on that Facility and Finance Committee. So we'll talk about that, and we'll get recommendations of who will serve or continue to serve there. We will have on January 17th a community meeting on facilities, just to kickstart bringing together that group and starting to look at facilities and finance and building our plans for the future. Education Committee, which we just talked about, will recommend up to 4 board members for that committee. Negotiation Committee, so same thing, that we've got negotiations starting already, and if we need to make changes there. And then Committee of the Whole, all of the attachments there are just the schedule of days that are blocked off for Committee of the Whole. That doesn't necessarily mean that we'll meet on all of those dates. So if we choose to meet on those dates, we'll advertise it and we'll put it out there, but those dates are available to use. Make sense?
Unless there's an overwhelming rejection, I'd like to stay on the Facilities and Finance Committee.
And I would like
And I would like to also.
education.
You have interest in the finance and building?
Finance. Well, that's why.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
Emily
Emily
was-
She said
Yeah,
education.
she said
Education.
I would stay on education.
I have interest in education.
Okay.
Emily. Casey, so we need one more on the, up to 4, so if anybody else wants to do education.
I'll do education also.
That only leaves negotiations, and that's a fun one. Come
I
on,
did
somebody-
put up to 3 on negotiations.
Keep it a nice odd number.
We are in the middle of those right now,
Custodian.
with Mr. Gazy and Ms. Job.
Frank, is he gonna stay on?
Only for the custodian and maintenance. So I'm restricted by education.
I can help with that. I don't see anybody else jumping in there, so.
I'll do negotiations also.
Hey, we
Can I
need to
stay
fill-
on as education? There's already 4.
No.
Do we have
Who were the 4 already?
Frank,
facilities,
Emily, Casey, and
education?
Lynn.
Are those 2 full, facilities and education?
Tyler, Jeff,
Lynn,
Lynn,
Yeah, you
and
can't have
myself are on finance.
The only thing that can happen is Jeff can sit there, but.
That's okay.
and observe.
And observe, yeah.
Observe only.
Mhm. But we can't have more than 4.
We only have 2 who.
Mr. Courtney, would you like to bring your experience to the negotiation team?
I have a lot of it, but we need someone for it all.
We need to fill.
Thank you, Tyler.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I get a listing of what we had there?
So for Facilities and Finance would be Lynn, Robin, myself, and Tyler.
Okay.
Education was Lynn, Casey, Emily, and Frank. Negotiations is Tyler.
And Emily and I said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Emily volunteered for it.
Yeah, I
And I
threw my hat in.
If nobody else did.
And Robin would.
Frank's gonna stay and do the custodian.
Frank will finish up to one.
Same thing,
And Lynn
Lynn.
will finish up to one too. if she-
You'll stay with
Yeah,
custodian?
Yeah, whatever's in
Custodian and
process, let's
maintenance.
keep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lynn.
that's fair.
Okay, I have them all. Okay, moving down to 10.1 for the superintendent's report for next week. We do have a vote on a tax exemption. This was one that the board discussed with the legal issue last month. Are there any questions on that? And if there are, this is one that Mr. Demoski is aware of. Okay, the medical practitioner authorization agreement. This is for our, Mr. McMillan, help me out.
Access.
Thank you, our access billing with the WIU.
Why is this different than the thing we signed up for with Blairsville? Like, wouldn't that all fall under the same umbrella?
No, that,
Is it-
Mr. McMillan, can you explain the
Yeah.
access billing?
So, with the access billing, so like, let's say there's, for students with special needs, if there's, things that are medically related, you can basically, get reimbursement in some cases for that. So, if you have a doctor that has to sign off on the, the IEP, and sign off on medical necessity for that. So, it was actually, this has always been done by the intermediate unit, as part of our, access billing agreement with them. They bill for us. Well, since we took our speech teachers back, they said they're no longer providing that same service, of having that doctor that will review that and sign off on those. So, it's actually the same doctor they use. It's no difference in cost. They're familiar with the process. It's just that we can continue that and we're not losing, any possible reimbursement for those access funds.
Okay.
For lack of a better word, reimbursement.
Okay.
On 13.1, these are our course offerings for the 24-25 school year. So there are 3 lists on there. There's the K through 5 course summaries, the middle school course offerings, and then we have the draft high school course selection guide for 24-25. Before we open discussion on this, when we were working on the high school course selection guide, those other discussions of the schedule and the courses in the education committee came up, and that's where we were saying we have to get something out to schedule for 24-25, but so we're gonna run 24-25 as we have in the past, and in the background be working on the changes that will be made. And we started to have some of those discussions, what we felt would be appropriate changes in the future, but we wanna have those in deeper discussion in the future. But for right now, what you're looking at is just 24-25, and it just allows the scheduling process to begin, more so at the high school than the elementary and middle levels.
Has there been any changes from 23-24 to 24-25?
Yes.
A few,
Minor?
Yeah,
few
some
changes.
renaming of courses. We looked at, some of the courses in the course selection guide that have been in there for years. It's no longer viable because of students not signing up to take them. So we looked at it, and it was part of the discussion of what courses staff like to create to give students a little bit more of what they need,
Are-
as a consumer.
Are any of those courses that were, students weren't signing up for, was that because of the scheduling difficulties that that often cause, because if they're a singleton against,
No, that were the courses that, no, I think there were 2 maybe. I
And
don't
those that we've
think-
been talking about for years, the
Yeah, there's a
The design that we were watching, I can't remember what.
fashion and
Fashion
The
illustration.
fashion illustration, we've
Yes,
been
that's
watching that
one.
for years, that the
Yeah.
numbers just have not been increasing. And there was a time that they said that it would either be completely, they were supposed to revamp it to see if anything happened, if any.
It's mostly deletions.
Yes.
And so fashion illustration was one. And I believe that was an area where, and correct me if I'm wrong, the teacher said this is just, it's part of another course.
Correct.
It doesn't need to be
Yeah.
its own
Right.
option that's hanging out there that we've seen over the years, we haven't had something for. The other one that's listed on there is accounting two. We had this discussion. It's not that accounting two goes away. Don't worry. What we were seeing is you have accounting one, honors accounting two, accounting two. And what we had a discussion on was, why is there an accounting one and an honors accounting? And what we found out was, well, if you're in honors accounting, then you're getting this bar set. And if you're not quite reaching that, we're gonna set the bar here. And now you have A and A, and we know from the post-secondaries, they say your honors title doesn't really mean anything, because we don't know what that means. And we said, well then, why would we give you less and give you, like, that's grade inflation at work. And that was, we started talking about that, saying, the ed committee, we have to start looking into those areas of where have we created structures where grade inflation has been set. The bar should be there, and you have to call it like it is, whatever that term is. Like, you don't say, we're gonna lower the bar and give you an A and a gold medal. Like, no, the bar's here, and if you don't meet the bar, we're gonna keep working with you to get to the bar. So it's really, kids are going into that honors accounting too. We also, this is something our students brought up, and the counselors with, like NCAA. The colleges will look at how many honors classes you have, that you're titling them honors, because they want that for a different purpose. All these different purposes don't exactly coordinate with one another, and you would know this, athletic director, you have to have so many of those. So we did say that at the state level, they say, well, these are the courses of high rigor. They are AP, IB, International Baccalaureate, we don't have those, or college and high school dual enrollment. So what came up also to talk about with the ed committee is, if the course is college and high school dual enrollment, does that get the honors tag to it? So an example that the kids brought up was plant animal biology. It's called plant animal biology, but it is a dual enrollment college and high school course. And they said, can you slap an honors in front of it? Now, there's two different ways to do that. Like, yeah, just have the honors in front. But the other train of thought is that let's put honors on one, and that's this bar, and no honors on another, and it's this bar, and you have two separate courses. And our goal is the bar should be the bar, and we should get all kids to the bar. Those are discussions we started to have. That's why the honors accounting too, we said, it's just, you take honors accounting too, and and we only had 1, 2 kids, like, and they're taking that class in the same classroom as the honors accounting too. They're already in the same classroom at the same time. It's just 2 sections running in that same time. So
The funny
things that
part
we're
is,
looking to fix.
We've talked about this since we were teachers together. We used to have honors U.S. history, and the students had no experience with U.S. history coming into the high school. We put this group, and I ended up with more sections of honors than I did regular U.S. I taught it no differently, and we could never understand, like, how are we picking kids for this honors when we weren't teaching it any differently? So
Oh, you didn't have like
the title,
you didn't have like an entry essay that they had to do, or based on,
there was no prerequisite for it. No.
And really with a lot of AP courses, there's no prereqs. It's, and some schools have gone to that the AP is the course, and all kids take it.
U.S. history is U.S. history. So,
Can we get a brief synopsis of what's been added and what's been?
Yeah, so
Deleted.
the deleted fashion illustration, accounting 2, but it's not a deleted. Photography 2 and animation 2 in the tech department, it's a combined course.
They're also in the same renewing.
Those are the deletions.
I think so.
Additions, I don't believe there are any additions.
Of course, which is just retitling.
And then we,
Renaming,
Did we
Isn't
end
there a
up
math
removing,
class that's renamed?
There's,
I don't think we renamed.
well, their World of Business was renamed, and
Yes.
I'm kind of perplexed actually about the World of Business. Like, how is it materially different from the financial literacy class? Because if you read the descriptions, they're actually really, really, really similar. And, the financial literacy it's about personal finance. And then the World of Business notes that students can navigate their finance decisions they face today and tomorrow, and a personal finance simulation will be used. So why do we have two?
Because a 17-year-old, we felt, was gonna gravitate more to a course called World Business than they would financial
Well,
literacy.
financial literacy is required.
Yeah, it's in
So why do we have,
Same name.
but why are they separate courses if they really cover effectively the same information?
Well, if you're talking about, we're looking at more global, like the world is more global economics, global finances.
Well, it still operates on a national level. What,
What, world economy?
no, well, like, you've got the US and you've got Saudi Arabia and you've got the UK. And
Yeah, more.
are you talking about the IMF? Is that what you're
No.
throwing in there?
Yeah,
Because it
we're
says
getting-
personal finance simulation will be used.
That will be
But if you're-
part of it. It's the overarching, we're not going micro, we're going macro.
is it the name of the
Mhm.
course?
Well, I'm just,
Okay.
I was looking at what they're going to be teaching, and it sounded like they were practically the same course.
The content is the same, it's just a different title.
Yeah, there's a couple in there that are just different titles that we just jazzed them up.
And some schools, Emily, have changed the titles, I don't like to use the term, it's made it more attractive for students that may not have looked at
That's
the
what I
title,
wondered.
I think that's what
and
she's
they've
asking.
changed the course name. They've done it at the CTCs and that, where instead of it being carpentry or this, it's called construction trades, and it's lumped in.
But why is one required and one is an elective if they're both effectively the
Are
same?
you asking, do we have World of Business and financial literacy as two separate courses?
Yes, we do. There are two
that-
separate courses in here, and I'm confused as to why we have two separate courses if they are effectively the same course, and one is required for graduation, and the other one is simply an elective if they are,
And would somebody
It-
take both classes? 'Cause that would be.
yeah, like you
I-
could take the
Get the credit for the same.
So-
full classes, because like you could
this-
take financial literacy, which is required, and then you could also get your credit for World of Business, and it's like, I just retook my class. How easy, I kept all my, like I've got all of the documents and whatever, it's just, it's, maybe I don't understand
I
it, but
think I can
based on
answer this, and I
this
don't-
course description, it sounds redundant.
Yeah, I could answer this if I can.
And there's no page number, so it's hard to refer
I
to
know.
you which page it's on. So.
But you're under the cap options with financial lit, that's the, okay.
And the other one's
I have
under
the answer
business.
for you, I have the answer. This was actually a few years back, because World of Business is not, that's a name change. It was, I can't remember what the name was. So financial literacy is a half credit course. The World of Business is a full credit course. So we do have some kids that want more of that experience in a full credit option versus that half credit the half credit is mandatory. A kid can take World of Business and that covers their requirement for financial lit, but then they
Does it?
expand on it in a full, yeah.
It doesn't say that it does.
Th-
The World of Business does
It
not
does.
say that it covers the financial literacy.
I'm telling you that
But shouldn't
it does. When a kid takes the class, they're getting what they need for financial literacy and they're going beyond it because they have a full semester of that class versus a half
So
semester.
they would never take both classes?
They would never take both classes.
But shouldn't that be noted in here for clarity?
We could note it for clarity, yes, but that's the reason why.
Okay,
But
because
but
that's
we
not
will-
noted.
We will note it for clarity for next week. Deal?
Okay, yeah, well,
I
it's,
believe, unless I'm wrong, that it's noted
Yeah.
on their actual course selection sheet.
Yes, the
'Cause-
course selection.
And
Because-
then they sit with their guidance counselors.
Well,
remember?
students and the parents who are looking at this should be able to know,
Well, they'll get the course selection sheet also.
Whenever you check
Right,
off
but that's what
your
this is.
thing,
No, that's the
there's
course
a page
selection guide.
that
There's-
you do.
right, but they'll have the guide, they'll be going through it, and, so
The
that,
sheet is what they turn in, when they actually write the
Yeah.
courses they request.
yeah, and
That
that's
will be
usually
on.
at like the back or something, it's usually
it's a
printed.
separate, it's
Put
a
it
separate
front.
page.
When we worked on this with teachers who are now retired, that was what they were saying was, we don't want to deny this full credit opportunity for kids that want it. They want more than the half credit. And so they said, we can give them that plus the more that they want in getting into the business world. So they're getting them on like an intro to business in that, but
Okay, but they shouldn't
The-
get 1.5 credits.
no, they don't.
They don't.
They get one
for-
credit.
Well, because
They get
they
one
would have to
credit.
take financial literacy because it's required, and,
No,
so, like,
no,
so you would say in here,
The principal signs
it's-
off that they got that credit.
okay,
They get that credit, that half credit by taking that class.
okay.
Yeah.
Clarity would be helpful.
I have 3 questions, but I'll start off with the ones that are high school related since we're in there. When you were listing the classes that were deleted, you didn't mention digital literacy. That one was finally removed, right? Because I couldn't find it in there. Because that used to be a requirement.
I think it's been changed
Yeah,
into
it was-
computer applications, and now you can take either Life in the Digital Age, Programming 1, and then I think there were a couple others. And I do have a
was
question
changed
about
last
that
year.
as well. It's like,
Okay, was-
why is that required for graduation when students really, by the time they get to high school, should already know how to use PowerPoint, already know how to use word processing, already know how to, do appropriate and prudent research on the internet? If they should already know how to do all of those things, why do they have this as a graduation requirement in high school? Like,
Well,
it seems
That's why
unnecessary.
that's why we want to dive into the new PA regs on grad requirements and taking a look at those for that 25-26 goal. Because let's take a look at the whole picture and say, like, what are we going to have as the graduation requirements for our kids?
But why not, like, why do we need to include that in this?
If we change it now, then, I mean, we're just changing it for, like, that's only gonna change for one group of kids. Like, we wanna look at the whole picture with the grad requirements of what do we need to change in those. Because there are other things in those grad requirements that I would say, I don't think we need it anymore. But we talked about this, and we said, we need to look at this holistically. Let's set the goal for 25-26, and like, we'll change that when we change that whole process.
Okay, because I'm also perplexed as to why, there was a lack of clarity on the STEM issue. So it says, you have to have 1 credit of STEM, which
Agree.
I don't understand that, since we already do science and we already do math, and if you're teaching both of those, you can very easily mix in technology and engineering as part of teaching that, so STEM's already wrapped up in,
So I can tell you the history
other-
of where it started, and also that's a thing that we talked about of saying, we can
'Cause-
change that down the road. The history of where that came in was about 6 or 7 years ago, when we were getting input from the colleges, and they were saying, because the Pennsylvania grad requirement was 3 math classes. And what we were hearing from the CTCs, the businesses, they were saying, well, the kid that doesn't take that math in that 3rd year, they're struggling in even things like their entry-level tests to, I remember these conversations at CTC, like getting into their placements. So what we said was, well, we're not going to say that that's a 4th math, but it could be a STEM math. That's where that whole thing came from. But what I'm telling you is, we want to change all of those things based on what's changed. But that's the history of why it was there, was to try to fit that necessity
okay.
at that time.
But that's still gonna make things kind of squirrely for this whole coming year.
No,
Especially when, if you look at, so it says that it's going to be noted in our course book, courses eligible for meeting the STEM course requirement will be outlined annually in the high school course select book. And then that's not clear to me what it is, since none of the math classes, other than math for tech and trades, has the one little asterisk that says counts as STEM math, but it's not clear that this is supposed to be STEM math, because STEM is kind of a mixture of science and math. So does my son have to take 4 years of math or 4 years of science, or what is this STEM thing that
As
is-
it's written right now, 3 years of math, and then one course that could be, it could be any of the maths that are in there, or STEM math, or it can be any of the tech classes. There are some engineering classes
But
that they can
it's
take.
not noted
And
in the courses available to seniors.
Mr. Jones, take note of that, and we'll check on that to see, because we discussed this as saying that they're noted there. And when the counselors meet with every single kid, and they go through it with every single kid of, this is what you can take, this, based on the requirements. That's an area that we need to adjust and change next year when we look at all of those requirements. Because that's not necessary anymore. We don't need to label it like that.
Yeah, because that's like, there's,
But when you have kids who are seniors who've been planning for that for 3 years, like, it's okay. We will work with them in any way. He has the authority as the principal of the high school to sign off on any of them as meeting the graduation requirement, as long as it meets the state requirement. And so if a kid comes in and says, that's not something, like, this is best for me, he can go in that meeting and say, if that's best for you, I sign off as a professional saying that that is best for you, and you're gonna graduate with that.
okay.
But that STEM math is something that we, again, will look at and say, it doesn't need to be that way.
Okay.
Brian, did you have a couple more questions?
Yes. The college and high school promise grant, that was crossed out in the course selection guide. Does that still exist?
So it exists. Right now, that is something that exists with the RK Mellon grant through December of 2024. And then we have a meeting tomorrow with GSEF, because one of the pieces that we've been talking with GSEF is a way of using the endowment to help kids with that. This school year, we're able to pay for every single kid's. So when we looked at that section, we said, we're gonna take it out because we're just gonna take care of the kids. So we just didn't want to confuse them, because some of that language was based on this school year of what would happen, and we thought it was easier to just pull that out.
And Dr. Bizzle, isn't there proposed legislation right now that they're looking at having dual enrollment?
So that legislation was that was actually impacting our funding, because we were to say, with the ADM, because what we were, and Jill Cooper, thank you, because she has gone to bat for that. If a kid was taking a college and high school or dual enrollment, we had to say that kid they weren't with us, they weren't in our classrooms, even though we were still providing them with everything. And so they were saying, well, for that percentage of the time in their schedule, you don't get that ADM. And that's where
Yeah.
Representative Cooper's been the lead on that, I think, to say, that's not right.
Okay.
And last one, last year, didn't we add a technology class for 7th graders? I didn't see that in the middle school guide. Didn't we add like the AI class?
What was the computer?
That was the computer class?
The 7th grade still has 2 technology classes, and the 6th grade has 3 technology type classes, and the 8th grade has 2 technology classes. They're not the same thing, that I recall, based on the title, but
And then
library.
we had also talked about adding one for 8th grade, so it kind of followed the students as well. So
Wasn't that the class that was added one day a week?
Yeah, it was like the AI class, and then we had talked
It
about this
rotated
year
with
adding
other
one for
classes.
8th grade. So just want to know where those were.
Yeah,
Seventh grade has graphics and 3D design, and then their
Correct.
library and media science is, that's a technology class, actually. And the wording on that is the same as sixth grade and the same as eighth grade, more or less, and so I don't really know if they're progressing in
They-
knowledge?
They do,
Well, it's,
they do.
okay, the course description indicates that it's the same class. So that's,
Yeah,
there's a lack of clarity there.
So, in the past, by the way, we never even had these. Like,
I know.
We just had the titles, and so we put these together. What I can say is, there is that technology in the seventh grade, it is very different than the sixth grade. It does build upon that. But, so if you're saying that we need to, what I will tell you is that our kids don't, like, these guides, our kids don't use these guides. What's probably more useful for us are the course outlines
Yeah, and
to look at with this.
And I hear, you know, indications of like all kinds of wonderful things that Dr. Nedley, for instance, has been doing to do the elementary curriculum to horizontally and vertically align it. And we haven't gotten to see any of those course outlines, and we're to approve the courses, but without having seen the course outlines. So I'm rather uncomfortable with that.
I think, Dr. Nedley, what I can do, we can send the entire course outline.
Because a lot's been
Everything.
done with the curriculum, it sounds.
Yeah, it has been.
But
It has
it's
been.
not complete.
And one thing that we're working on is putting it all out
Still a
on
process.
the web to get all of that information out to all the course outlines that we have. We are actually working on that about a month ago, of pulling together those course outlines.
Okay, well, but I'm,
But we did it last year so that we can, I don't wanna say save time. We moved forward with the motion and the vote to do the course selection book, elementary and elementary and middle school, I believe it was, because it's a time restraint for the high school to get everybody scheduled. Dr. Nedley, correct me, did we not just vote for that, and then because the elementary curriculum was not ready to the extent that Ms. Miller wanted, and then we moved forward and did it the next month, did we not?
I think it was because of that AI class, if I remember.
I think it was the AI.
The-
Took a lot of.
So looking at the seventh grade, every seventh grader takes English Language Arts 7. They all take that, different than English Language Arts 6. Aligned to the seventh grade standards versus the sixth grade standards, and different reading material than they use in the sixth grade. Same with the eighth grade. They all take middle school math, either middle school math 2 or 3. 3 would be the accelerated, and 2 would be seventh grade standard only. They all take Science 7. Science 7 is a life science. Science 6 is a geoscience. Science 8 is a physical science. They all go into social studies, which is a first part overview of U.S. history, which those are areas we're working, starting with the elementary this year, of working through that curriculum at the K through 5 level before we revisit at the 6 through 12 level.
but the sixth grade doesn't have any social studies or history.
They do. They have, no, they have social
They have
studies.
geoscience.
Geography is social studies. They have geoscience.
Based on the description, it sounds more like a geology, like the emphasis is on the geology. It's emphasis on more of the science of it than on cultures, geography, any history, anything like that.
Right. It's
So-
not a history-based course. It's a geography-based course and a geoscience. It's a geoscience. They're working on earth science and geography. And I have a master's in geography. And I will tell you that it is one heck of a geography course, because in looking at it, it's similar to the course that I taught at the collegiate level. It's very much a geoscience, where they are looking at cultures related to the earth and how it interacts.
It sounds more
I'll
like a
defend that
geology.
course up and down.
The
And it is social
So,
studies.
Can I just say one more thing, that remember, you're reading a summary.
Yeah.
of what the teachers do all year. It's a
It's-
summary. It does not outline every
180
single
days.
day of the 180 days that they instruct.
Well,
It
it's-
is just a summary.
But it still needs to have.
Summary.
cl-
It's not going to have everything. It's listing a summary of what is being provided.
Okay, but
So
it,
this is what the teachers are giving us to say, this is a summary of what they're offering all year long. And at the K-5 level, their courses are very general. I mean, it's English, it's math, it's science, and social studies aligned to the standards. And so those are summaries there that we were giving K through 5 to explain, these are the topics that we hit all year long.
but still in that geoscience course, if it doesn't include anything about geography and cultures and instead emphasizes the geological side of it and the weather side of it, then there's no indication to me that there's
So are
any
you
geography
saying,
really.
I'm just saying, we as educators will do a better job writing the description.
That's.
Is that what you're asking?
Is that
would
what you're
be-
asking?
That would be helpful, because it, you know, as I'm looking through the curriculum, it seems like, well,
Well, that's not correct.
So-
well, like, not the
Can I-
curriculum, I
I
meant
like
course
to-
book, but as I look through it, I should.
Question
I-
something here, Emily. This sounds like this debate should have been ironed out in the education committee.
Right, and that was,
Not in a public
Correct.
board discussion.
I
meeting.
agree, and that,
So why was this not, and I'm looking at
because,
the education committee and our educators.
because I was told that the education committee was now going to be done as a committee of the whole. That's what I was told.
Then why did we just agree to people to be on the education committee?
Well, I don't know why it effectively got disbanded this past year. That was very perplexing.
It-
And
It didn't disband. It did not disband.
I was told that it was turned into a committee of
It
the
did
whole.
not disband. And what we said was, when we need to meet, we'll use those committee of a whole dates to meet and talk about those things and bring those to discussion.
So why was
So
this
what
not
we
brought?
need to do when we bring that committee together is to say, what are the goals of the committee? We never had goals as a committee. So that's just a failure of the committee. You can't operate if you don't have goals of the committee, of what it is we're going to focus on. What I presented today is that we set goals that 25, 26, that we work on graduation requirements, we work on schedules, and we work on course selection guides, this is part of that. That should be our goal. Now we have a purpose for coming together, and not just what are we doing when we meet? There's no reason to meet if we don't have a goal for meeting. And we need the same when we come together for negotiation committees. We need the same for facilities and finance. What are our goals? We didn't have any goals. And that's everyone's fault, mine included, that was on the committee. That's why we weren't meeting. And when we met as a committee of a whole, it was usually, okay, we have something that we have to talk about, and we need everybody to hear it at the same time. Because a lot of times, if it's a data report or something the principals have, everyone needs to hear that. We did talk about those things. Because we would have, I remember a meeting where Dr. Federico presented great with one of her staff members, and we said, "Boy, the whole board needs to hear that." And that's when we said, okay, when we have things like this, we need to do it with the whole board. But I want to set the committees we set with specific goals. And this would be a goal of that. How do we get better at giving people, if it's clarity, we make more clarity. But I can speak to you about the curriculum of what the kids are going to get and what they're going to be offered and where they're going to get the AI and who teaches it. And then we probably have course outlines for that are in much greater detail.
Again, all that should be ironed out in the education committee,
Long before
It's
right
not
now. It should have happened in like
here.
October.
not debated here.
Because now it's like, well, now we have to pass it. And that doesn't set well. You know, like I've asked for the curriculum guides like a while ago. And it's like, well, they're not done. And, you know, I hate to be difficult on this, but
Emily, we can schedule an individual time to come in.
Yes.
I'll sit with you with
Yes.
Dr. Nedley. We'll show you all of our curriculum guides that we have right now. Every single
it
one.
should be
Open
all
up
of them.
Every
to
single one of them.
everyone that's interested on that too.
If anyone else from
Absolutely.
the committee wants to be part of it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, this isn't the only thing in the high school course selection guide, like, okay, maybe I'm being nitpicky about the wording, but the visual arts encourage critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, creative, and innovative skills that are vital to prepare all students to succeed in the global marketplace. I don't think that's what inspired Michelangelo. you know, so
So you're saying that we can do better at our,
it just
at our-
seems like
at
the
our
wrong
tasks.
focus.
I get it. We
It's
can-
like the wrong focus. Like, why is everything about the global marketplace? It's all about the marketplace, and there's a whole boatload of artists and, you know, that are focused more on
What I would
what it
also
does for the
want,
human
Emily,
spirit.
these teachers deserve to be in the room to say, this is what I
Yes.
do with the
Sure.
kids every day.
I'm sure that's the
Every
case,
day.
but
'Cause my
is this
focus for the
false,
teachers
like, not
is-
being clear advertising
If
on
a
what the
teacher
courses
gives me
are?
an awesome description of what they're doing, and it's not happening in the classroom, and they give me a description that's kind of like, but it's happening in the classroom, I'll take it happening in the classroom 10 days out of 10.
But I don't think that the
So the
teachers,
teachers need to be there to talk about their courses too, so they can defend what they do.
I don't think this top part, you know, I'm sorry to be difficult on it, but everything seems to be pushing towards, everything's about the global marketplace, everything's about economics.
But it's not.
And that's not what the teachers are focused on. I'm pretty sure the teachers down here they are doing something different in the classroom, but I'm unhappy with this description, pushing art into just, it's all about the economics. And Dana Gioia, poet and chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, and not only that, but the VP of General Foods wrote, "The purpose of arts education is not to produce more artists, though that is a byproduct. The real purpose of arts education is to create complete human beings capable of leading successful and productive lives in a free society." And it just, this sort of, I'm
Before-
sorry, this just
before I
strips, it
ask-
just,
before I
global
ask to
marketplace
move on
just
to the
strips the
next
spirit.
item, I want to reiterate, this should have been ironed out in the committee. All these details, and it should have been ironed out.
Before we move on to the next item, was the AI class listed in the middle school? God, I couldn't.
That piece of the curriculum is within the library and media science
Okay.
course.
And then what are we adding for eighth grade? Because last year we talked about adding a technology class for the eighth grade.
The eighth grade
That's
has
one
to.
where
To go
we,
along with that AI class to kind of build on that.
They already have.
yeah, that's down in the library and media science.
Okay. What
It's
is
in
that,
the
what
eighth
is that
grade.
focused on? I don't remember.
So that one's focused on digital media.
Okay. I thought it was more of a programming class.
No,
Runs through my mind.
They're all about programming.
That one is, I think it is Python through digital media, but the first one is an extension of Scratch.
Right.
The next one goes into AI,
Mhm.
and the next one goes in an intro to, like, I think they are using
I think it's
Python
Okay, all right.
in that one.
Okay, but that is being added this year?
That happens in the library media science.
Okay, thank you.
What happened to sewing and constructing garments
We're gonna
and
move on.
culinary?
We're not gonna look at
Like-
every item in that book
Take it
tonight.
to the education committee.
Take it to the committee. We're not gonna look at every item in that book tonight and discuss, or we'll be here till tomorrow night.
Or send an email with your questions, because we got the book, was it last, I can't see, was it Friday when it got sent out in the email?
And that's-
To start reviewing, whenever it was. or the
It
week
was before,
Week
but we were
before
sick
that.
all break.
Okay, but the thing is when that happens, send an email if you have specific questions to Dr. Medley or to Dr.
CC
Bissell,
can always.
so that it can be discussed, they can be prepared to answer any questions that you want to ask in the meeting, Emily.
But shouldn't this also be a discussion amongst us as to about what
Because he can
these are?
easily say this question, when we have a discussion meeting, this was presented, these questions were raised by Mrs. Miller. I would like to present this to the board. You're not left out of it. But it's
Right.
still, you bring up the questions because those are your concerns. There might be 8 other board members that didn't have the concerns and are reading it as a course description, summary, not everything that is gonna be taught in that class.
I'm not asking for everything
But
to be
I'm-
taught in the class.
Emily, I'm just making what you said.
Just
I
move
think we
on,
need to
Joe.
move
I would
on,
like to, I would like
Jeffrey.
to move on, please. And the next item is conference and workshop request.
All right, so we have a conference workshop request that is for Mrs. Harper to attend the Black Holes and Destructive Tidal Forces workshop at the Cavalli Institute. And no cost to the district except for the daily substitute for those days she is out.
Is this the one that she attends every year?
She does attend every year. We do have a cooperative agreement 15.1. This is approval for 6 of our students to participate in boys lacrosse at Greensburg Central Catholic for the 23-24 school year.
Question, Dr. Bissell, what
Yes.
if any other students, once they hear that's happening, wants to participate in it? Will you add more students to it, or is it just those 6?
That's a good question, and I would say that they would need to present that to the athletic department, and then that would have to be presented then to Greensburg Central Catholic, who could say, nope, we're full.
So it's not necessarily we're forming
No,
the
no.
team. That's where the question,
They're-
when this got posted, I was asked about that, is, are we doing?
They'll
Do they not have
participate.
enough, do we not have enough, are we merging with them? So that's why I
Yeah,
asked
and
the
we don't
question.
have a boys
Lacrosse.
lacrosse team,
Correct.
so, yeah. And then 17.1, UPG dual enrollment agreement. This is a pilot through the end of the year with a handful of courses that are not offered at Greensburg Salem, that are offered through UPG, where the students can take these asynchronously. So right now, it's just 4 classes. They did have additional classes, but we already had them offered through our own curriculum. So we just said that we would work with them through their pilot process on these 4 classes that we don't have.
So you said we don't have them, would the students go to UPG to take these classes?
No, they will take these asynchronously, and so they can do that while they're here at school.
But they would do it from a computer? Okay.
Yeah. And some of them are choosing to do it, I believe, by just, they're gonna take the additional credit through the pilot.
Would they have the option of going to UPG and sitting in and taking the class?
They do have an option to do that already. The cost is usually different, because then they're paying the cost of a true dual enrollment.
I get that.
Yeah.
But that option is there.
It's there.
if-
Mhm.
Thanks.
Are these listed in the course selection guide?
They're not. This would be a pilot that we would approve for just this spring term
Okay.
with
How would
with
the
students.
students know about these then?
So they've already been at the high school. UPG has been there to talk to the seniors and juniors. They've been there a number of times, and then we will get the courses out to the students through the guidance office.
They're gonna do a visit to UPG also.
The kids will go to UPG.
Okay, thank you.
The place is really upgraded over the years. Big time.
That's everything on the agenda right now.
Okay. We'll open it up to questions or comments. Okay. We'll see you next week.